Hello everyone, I'm Michael Serapio. As this week began in Ottawa, many were wondering what impact the Liberal caucus meeting would have on the Prime Minister, and as it turns out, not much.
United behind you.
The Liberal Party is strong and united.
Justin Trudeau emerged from that meeting on Wednesday full of bravado, despite hearing from several MPs reportedly about their disappointment in his leadership, and despite a supposed Monday deadline for the Prime Minister to tender his resignation. But if leaving is on Justin Trudeau's mind, we've had no indication of it in his public statements.
We're going to continue to have great conversations about what is the best way to take on Pierre Poilievre in the next election, but that'll happen with me as leader going into the next election.
Well, to talk about the week, we're now joined by Robert Fife, Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Globe and Mail, Tonda MacCharles, Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Toronto Star, and Joël-Denis Bellavance, Ottawa Bureau Chief for La Presse. Hello to the three of you.
Hi there.
Hello, Michael.
So very quickly, the Prime Minister comes out and says, no, I'm staying. I'm going to lead the Liberals into the next election. So how important now is this deadline given to him on the 28th, or is it not important anymore?
Well, he's been consistent in saying he's going to stay. He met with the caucus. The dissidents thought when they left that he was going to reflect as they were going to reflect, and they wanted him to come back on the 28th, and the next day he said, no, I'm staying. So it's a good question. We are going to watch to see what they're going to do. This is not an overly brave group of people. We know there's 24, and 24 apparently have put their names on it, but 24 people have never told us really who they are. We know some of the people, but most of them we do not know. And neither does the Prime Minister's office, because they never put the letter with the names on it. So I think we're some ways from a full rebellion, but we are starting to see signs of more bravery on the part of Liberal MPs because the poll numbers are not changing, even though when we left that caucus meeting, some of them were coming out and saying, we've got to get Poilievre, we're united, we've got to get Poilievre. But unless those numbers change, I think you're just going to see more and more of this sort of dissension, and it'll probably grow.
Dissension and, again, unspecified consequences.
Well, I would just say that actually some of the numbers are shifting, which might be enough to allow Mr. Trudeau a little bit more time, because we have seen a couple of polls in the last week or so that show likability numbers for Mr. Poilievre going down. So, does he get to then make his case? Does the Prime Minister get to make his case to say, I'm the one bringing that down? We're pointing out the risks of a Poilievre government. I'm not convinced like Bob. I think it's a significant number, 24, who say they've signed on. It's not to be dismissed, but I think the Prime Minister and his team feel like they've kind of beaten it back temporarily, or at least they think that they've answered the call for him to go by Monday, because he said, no, he's not, he's staying. But I think they ignore it at their peril. We also know, all of us, that there are people who didn't sign the letter who also believe he should go. Mm-hmm. So, I use this analogy in our podcast. I really do think this is, that was a flash fire for them Wednesday. They think they put it out. But there is a peat fire smoldering underground for this government, right? It's a significant number that they can't afford to see all walk out the door. So what's the or else on Monday? They all said you have to leave and trigger a leadership race by Monday, or then what? And that's the big question, isn't it? Unless any of you guys know. I don't think they're all going to form a separate caucus or a separate party or vote non-confidence in the PM.
To be able to have some leverage, you need a plan B if the plan A doesn't work. And that group, as Bob pointed out, is not well organized. Yeah. We've seen putschists in the past, and they were more, well organized and well planned, and they were ultimately successful. This one may fizzle, but as Tonda pointed out, what's the plan B? Are they willing to sit as independent MPs, or are they willing to vote with the Tories and other opposition parties against the government? Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative Party leader, said that they had talks with some of the MPs, Liberal MPs, who are demanding Mr. Trudeau to quit. And he said that if there's a vote on the carbon tax to increase it again, they will vote with the Conservative Party. So it remains to be seen, but it's going to make sure that the situation will remain volatile for the Prime Minister in terms of his leadership.
And there's another aspect to this, is fundraising. Yeah. The Liberals are having I mean, the Tories are way, way ahead in terms of fundraising. The Liberals are really not doing that well. And I've talked to a lot of Liberals who say, you know what, I'm not going to contribute any money until he goes. And that is a really powerful sign of dissatisfaction with Mr. Trudeau's leadership. And if that is as significant as perhaps people are suggesting, that is a real problem for them, because you need money to run election campaigns. You need money to run ads against Mr. Poilievre, who has been spending a fortune on advertising, not only on social media but in broadcasting. Just this week, you can, if any channel you turn on, there's a Poilievre ad.
French and English, I can testify to that. I saw the ads in French and English on Radio-Canada and CBC and Hockey Night in Canada and whatever you want.
In high
the Liberals
rotation.
say that's coming, right? So you know, it remains to be seen if it's satisfactory enough for the dissidents, right? Is there a plan? I mean, Nate Erskine-Smith, the MP, came out after that caucus meeting and said that they didn't get a chance to hear what stage the planning is at, but many of them have been told that the ads are coming.
Yeah.
And is that going to be enough? Look, there's a lot of people there asking for changes in the cabinet. Will they do that sooner, or will they wait till after the election? Changes in policy approach, changes in the staffing at the PMO. Will we see that kind of change? That's not all on the Liberal Party. It's on the Prime Minister and his team
Or
to
has
deliver.
the PMO looked at the dissension and say it's not as large as we feared it is, and we can control it and continue to go forward?
They absolutely feel they dodged a bullet on Wednesday. That is the message that we took away that from all our discussions, is that there was a sense that if there was ever a time that 40 MPs were going to come forward, that would have been it. But that wasn't the case either in the letter, 24 unnamed individuals, nor at the microphone in caucus. Some 20-ish went to the mic to say they didn't support the Prime Minister staying, various versions of that. But, you know, another 20 to 25 said, you know, enough, we support him.
We would have seen if they dodged the bullet, though, if they had a secret vote.
Yeah,
they didn't want a secret vote.
Exactly, yes,
people were talking
exactly
about,
that.
you know, but I do have to ask, though, because you know, the argument we continue to hear from the Liberal government is we're going to show Canadians how well we govern, and the numbers are going to turn around. But how well can they govern? I'm thinking about the immigration announcement, you know, just a couple of days ago. Here you have an important policy shift. And the questions were not about the policy shift. They were about Justin Trudeau's leadership. So how well can they show Canadians their effectiveness in government if they are overshadowed by continuing questions about the leader? That's challenging.
That's really the fundamental question, because as we know, when a party is divided and is fighting among themselves in public like that, you lose trust of Canadians. And no matter what you put out in the window, Canadians see the fights that they're showing. And not only that, but the opposition parties are taking a delight in seeing what's happening in the Liberal ranks. We heard Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative Party leader, Yves-François Blanchet, the Bloc Québécois leader, and the NDP leader, John Meeting, making hay out of the divisions within the Liberals. So out of this exercise, Mr. Trudeau may have dodged a bullet, but he came out of it weakened. And we expect more of that kind of dissensions to continue over the next few weeks, because I don't think that the government can fight what is very difficult to fight, which is voter fatigues with the government and the appetite for change.
But and there's this deadline of the 28th on Monday, but there's also the Bloc Québécois deadline on the 29th. And so it's not as if the pressures from the other parties have lessened in this. So it makes me wonder, the episode that we saw this week, does that increase the likelihood of either prorogation or an early vote?
Well, that's a really good question. I don't think, by the looks of things, that we're going to see an early vote, but it's certainly possible. I would not rule out anything. But prorogation is an interesting thing because it's being talked about. Everybody's actually talking about it. If you run into anybody on the street, so what's he going to do? Is he going to stay, or is he either going to go? They're going to prorogue, right? That's what everybody's talking about. And I think that certainly is being seriously considered. But it's when you do it, because if you're going to wait until November to do it, then you can, prorogation should roughly be about a 3-month period of time. There is sort of an unofficial way of doing this for political reasons like this. So that would bring you into, say, February. You could have a throne speech and a budget, might get into an election by that period of time. So I do think it's still on the table, particularly because Parliament, which we haven't talked about, but is paralyzed. There's no business going on because they're having a fight over this green slush fund money. And even though most of the country doesn't know.
But I think it is tempting for the Liberals to prorogue at a certain point. The question of timing is absolutely critical. But I think that, you know, the reset, when they come back, they will still be faced with a challenge to persuade Canadians that any throne speech or budget is bringing the change they desire. And yet, I bet he's pretty tempted. I wouldn't have been surprised, frankly. I was thinking they're going to prorogue on Thursday. Like after that caucus meeting, maybe press reset right now.
And it's a risky proposal because a speech from the throne is a vote of confidence, and you may not have the opportunity to table a budget afterwards. I talked to the Bloc Québécois.
It doesn't have to be, though. It doesn't have to be.
What, the speech from the throne?
A throne speech doesn't have to be.
Confidence vote?
Didn't Peter Van Loan one time do a
No, I think a throne speech is...
For sure?
For sure, because you need the confidence of the House
a
on that.
A fall economic statement does not have to
necessarily,
be, right?
Depends. If you
they can get through that.
Yeah, but coming back to the ultimate of the Bloc Québécois, I talked to the Bloc Québécois and they mentioned to me that on Tuesday, Yves-François Blanchet will have a press conference to announce that it's game over, and then he will start discussions with the other parties to try to bring down the government. So that will make it officially 2 parties who won a federal election this fall, the Conservative Party and the Bloc Québécois.
The NDP don't, though.
It's the mystery card. What will the NDP do when faced with...
But the longer the NDP withholds, the weaker they get. Because they, even though they're out of this agreement, supply agreement with the government, if they continue to prop them up, they're going to look, as the Conservatives say, the NDP Liberal government, and that does not help the NDP. But of course, you can understand why they wouldn't. Look what happened in British Columbia.
Yep.
The NDP got wiped out in a lot of these ridings that they hold federally, provincially, but they would face the same fate federally.
Hoping to gain that federally,
Right.
but you're right. Like it was a very tight election where the provincial Conservatives really rode on the coattails of Pierre Poilievre. So it's.
But then New Brunswick, what does that? You know, then the Liberals take a majority in New Brunswick and a conservative.
But it was a conservative
premier
government and an unpopular
that is defeated.
Yeah. Very unpopular.
I think there are interesting messages from both those elections for the federal parties. You know, I think that the Liberals probably took, they did say they took some solace from the New Brunswick result, but I think they've got to wonder if, you know, what's happening to the progressive vote in this country, and are they in the position to capitalize on it?
And the Liberal brand per se. I mean, the Liberal Party does not exist provincially in many provinces, in BC, Saskatchewan.
And where it does, they're not putting it on the signs.
No.
Well, and at the end of the day, if Justin Trudeau does not step aside, if he does not help usher in a different leadership, does that necessarily condemn the Liberal Party to lose another election, go into the wilderness for 10 years, and reformulate what they are?
I mean, it all comes down to this. This is a vote on Justin Trudeau. And the polls have been very clear for well over a year that Canadians have had it with him. And I don't see how you can change that. And it's just the cycle of political life. It doesn't matter which political party you're in. You've been there for, 9 years, and people just don't want to see you anymore.
It's a tough proposition. Yeah. Okay, well, we will watch what happens on Monday, Tuesday. This never-ending story that is Ottawa. Bob, Tonda, Joël-Denis, thank you very much.
Have a good weekend.
You too.